everyone, and greetings. Thank you for joining us today. Please note that this event is being recorded and will be available on social media. My name is Renée Sgroi, and I'm pleased to co-host, along with Maria Pia Spadafora and Delia de Santis, the third virtual Books and Biscotti literary series open mic offered to you by the Association of Italian Canadian Writers, or otherwise known as the AICW. Please note that if you missed the September and October virtual open mic events, they are available to you on YouTube at AICW Canada. And I think perhaps put that in the chat. If I just will pause for a moment. If there anyone has unmuted themselves, could you please mute, especially during the readings? Just a reminder for us. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are in different places at this time. I know we're not all on the same continent. But I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous communities in Canada that have legal treaty rights to the land and have practiced their cultures on these lands for thousands of years and continue to do so today. I'm currently just outside of Toronto, and I'm on the traditional homelands of First Nation communities in the Williams Treaties, and that includes Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. The Association of Italian Canadian Writers acknowledges these and all Indigenous communities who care for the land across our country, recorded and unrecorded, and we pay our respects to Canada's first storytellers. Today, we will listen to 8 distinguished writers, all members of the AICW. We'll begin with Annalisa Panati, who will be joined by her colleague Riccardo Adami, Licia Canton, Darlene Madott, Francesco Esposito. Then we'll have some announcements. Then we'll have 4 more readers, Giuseppina Cesari, Josie DeSouza, Carmela Bruno, and Francis Garofalo. But first, I'd like to introduce Delia de Santis, a longtime volunteer and currently the acting president of the AICW. She is also the author of the book, Fast Forwarded and Other Stories, as well as the editor of many volumes, including People, Places, Passages, that was published in 2018, which is an anthology with 98 Canadian writers of Italian heritage. So Delia, over to you.
Thank you, Renee, and good evening, good afternoon. This third open mic event is brought to you from the Association of Italian Canadian Writers. We are a national non-profit organization that brings together a community of writers, critics, academics, and other artists. The AICW's mission is to support and encourage the expression and dissemination of the Italian Canadian experience. And anyone can join, even if you're not of Italian extraction. We have over 100 members and quite a few are from other countries. Most of the writers write in English, but others write in French and Italian, and some even in dialect. We always welcome new members, and anyone requiring more information can email us at info@aicw.ca. You can also visit our website at aicw.ca and get to know about activities we have already organized and continue to organize to promote our members and their works. We have a conference every 2 years, which results in the publication of a volume of academic and creative work. Check out some of these books on the website. Look for our events at AICW.ca website, AICW Facebook page, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Unfortunately, at this time, our Books and Biscotti reading, we cannot serve refreshments, but we are happy to bring you a wider participation of writers, not just local ones. And we have, and now it is my pleasure to welcome the first reader of this session to the mic, Annalisa Panati from Verona, who comes from us, from Verona, but she lives in different places sometimes. Welcome.
Thank you for the introduction. So I will read in Italian, quindi buonasera. Stasera vorrei leggervi la prima scena della mia opera teatrale, che è questa, Vita e sogni di Mr. Paoli, che è pubblicata a Scienza Express, che parla dei rapporti tra il fisico Wolfgang Pauli e lo psicologo Carl Jung. L'opera comincia a Casa Pauli, dove la vedova di Pauli, Franca, che sarà interpretata da me, e Charles Hens, l'ultimo allievo di Pauli, che sarà interpretato da Riccardo Adami, si riuniscono per riordinare le cose di Wolfgang Pauli. Questi sono i libri che stava studiando e qui alcune note che prendeva durante la lettura. Qui ci sono gli atti delle conferenze. Invece gli appunti che prendeva durante i seminari sono qui.
E questo?
E quelli sono i sogni.
I sogni?
Io gli dicevo sempre, non farlo, Wolfi, ma lui ogni mattina, lui a colazione.
Signora Franca.
È tutta colpa di quel maledetto Jung. Non l'ho mai potuto soffrire, ma Wolfi diceva che ci eravamo incontrati grazie a Jung.
Vi ha presentato Jung?
Ma no, ci siamo incontrati ad una festa. Ma Wolfi diceva che era l'esteriore che riflette l'interiore, insomma, la sincronicità.
Signora Franca, si calmi. Dice cose sconnesse.
Magari, caro Charles, dicessi cose sconnesse. Invece lui ci credeva proprio a tutte queste baggianate. Basta guardare quanto è grande quella scatola. Tutti i giorni a colazione lui scriveva.
La mattina a colazione lui annotava i sogni?
Ogni mattina, ogni sacrosanta mattina.
Ma, signora Franca, non c'è niente di tragico. Molte persone oggi credono che i sogni...
Ma lui era uno scienziato, un fisico, un uomo pluriammirato per la sua razionalità. Lui era Herr Professor Pauli. Invece questi sogni, questi stupidi sogni.
Signora Franca, si fermi. Tutti gli scritti di Pauli sono patrimonio dell'umanità.
No, quelli sono patrimonio dell'umanità. Questi invece non sono nulla, sono solo stupidi sogni a cui lui cercava disperatamente di dare un'interpretazione. Questi andrebbero...
D'accordo, signora Franca, d'accordo, ma non li strappi.
Charles ha avuto un'idea. Voglio commissionarti un libro, la biografia scientifica di Wolfgang. Voglio che ne esca un Pauli scienziato. Ti pagherò, ma Wolfgang deve apparire uno scienziato.
Ma signora Franca, il professor Pauli era uno scienziato e di prim'ordine, un genio precoce, uno dei fondatori della meccanica quantistica. Oggi qualunque studente pronuncia il suo nome con venerazione.
Tu dici?
Devo forse ricordarle che suo marito ha vinto il premio Nobel?
Tu dici così, Charles. Perché non facevi colazione con lui quando farneticava sulle teorie e sui sogni? Questo non deve apparire nel libro. Niente ha detto di sottostelle sull'effetto Pauli. Devono apparire solamente tutte le sue scoperte scientifiche in ordine cronologico.
Ma così sarà un libro noiosissimo.
Va bene, qualche aneddoto lo possiamo mettere, ma il minimo.
E non si potrà fare a meno di parlare di Jung.
Jung, quel maledetto ciarlatano, se ce l'avessi qui davanti. D'accordo, ma il minimo possibile.
E forse vuole contattare la scuola junghiana di Zurigo? Saranno certamente molto interessati ai sogni di un premio Nobel.
Certo, li contatterò al più presto. Ora vai, che sono un po' stanca.
Sì, signora Franca, si riposi. E ancora una volta le mie più sentite condoglianze.
Alla scuola junghiana di Zurigo, figuriamoci, li vorreste, eh? Maledetti, di tutte le persone al mondo, voi siete gli ultimi a cui li darai, piuttosto che vederli nelle vostre eremite, io li brucio. Vampiri, parassiti di sogni, sognate da soli se ci tenete tanto. Ti ho amato tanto, lo sai, Wolfgang? Con tutto il cuore. I tuoi sogni, invece, li ho odiati con tutta l'anima. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalisa.
Thank you so much.
Riccardo. Thank you. That was nice. And now we I call Licia Canton. Please go to the mic.
Hi, I'm here. I'm here. Thank you, Delia. And thanks, Renee and Maria Pia, for co-hosting this event. I want to acknowledge the Canada Council and the Writers Union of Canada for supporting my reading today. I will be reading from The Pink House and Other Stories, published in 2018. There are 15 linked stories. The first story titled Watching Them Laugh, and the last story titled The Motorcycle are stories that honor the first generation immigrants, those people who came to Canada first, the generation of my parents. And today I will be reading Watching Them Laugh. That is, I will be reading snippets from Watching Them Laugh because I do not have time to read the whole story. And the reason I want to do that is because the woman who inspired this story turned 85 this week. And so here is Watching Them Laugh. They are laughing, mouths wide open, their bodies move to the rhythm of exhilarating laughter. Theirs is a hilarious, inaudible laughter. They are looking at the display at the store entrance. Who knows why they are laughing so hard? They do not know that someone is watching them. Now they have stopped laughing. The girl points to the shelf. She appears to be explaining something to the woman. Who knows what? The woman nods. They disappear into the store. They did not see that I am watching them. I'm sitting at a table at Galerie d'Anjou, a shopping center in the east end of the city. I've just eaten a piece of carrot cake with a cappuccino. I'm waiting for my mother and my daughter. They had stood at the entrance of the toy store for 15 minutes, looking at the showcase, laughing. I am waiting. I've decided not to call them, not to tell them to hurry up. That's what I would have done any other day. I want to be patient no matter how long they take. I will not call them. The teachers are on strike today. That's why we are at the shopping center on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock. Normally, I'd still be at work, my daughter at school. Every once in a while, I go on strike too. I look at my watch. It's already been 20 minutes since they left me here waiting, but I won't call them. I want to see how long they'll take. I already know that dinner won't be ready at 6:30 tonight. It doesn't matter. It's an unusual day. I'm here at an awkward time because my mother needs yarn. Sitting at the table between the yarn shop and the toy store, I watch people go by. I never have the time to do that. I see a mother pushing a newborn in the stroller, a grandfather who isn't fast enough for the 3 kids he's with, a father holding 2 children by the hand. They are all in a rush. Every one of them should already be elsewhere. Now I see my daughter and my mother coming out of the store. No, wait, they've stopped at the display at the entrance again. I'd like to call them, but I won't. My mother looks tired, but she's having fun with her granddaughter. They are laughing. I want to capture this moment of tender happiness, of bonding between 2 women at opposite ends of life. One of them would like time to go by quickly, to make her own decisions, eat whatever she wants, read all night, never sleep. The other is tired of a lifetime of work far away from her homeland. How many years does she have left? I wonder if she will see this girl become a woman. I should get up and tell them to hurry. Instead, I will wait the time that it takes. After a while, I lose sight of them. They've gone back into the store. I send my husband a text message. Slow day, at Gal's, dinner late tonight. 5 more minutes go by. No doubt my mother has bought something. Grandma always buys what I wouldn't buy. Mothers lack what grandmothers have. Moms are always in a hurry. They listen, but don't hear. Grandmothers, on the other hand, have lots of time and money after having worked hard their whole life. That's just the way it is. Like many others of her generation, my mother left a sunny rural setting to follow a man with extravagant ideas. She followed him to a cold, distant land without asking any questions, even though she wasn't always happy. She would have preferred living closer to her parents and siblings. Perhaps she would have preferred hoeing the land under the Venetian sun. After decades in the cold, she could have been bitter or disappointed about her life, but she isn't. No, she's always smiling, still positive, always youthful. Even today, she looks younger than her age. But my mother's hands tell a different story, that of a difficult life. After 37 minutes, they are back. They are laughing. I look at my watch, but I don't say anything. Well then, are you happy? Yes, they both smile. My daughter opens the bag and unwraps 6 tiny figurines that cost too much. A leopard, a polar bear, a German shepherd, a squirrel, a toucan, an owl. What happened? I ask. You said you wouldn't buy anything. They look at each other. They start laughing again. Okay, I'm going to the yarn shop now, my mother says. I won't be long. I'll go with you, says my daughter. Please hurry. They didn't hear me, or they pretended not to. I watch them walk away, and I see that they are laughing. Thanks very much, everyone.
And now the next reader will be Darlene Madott, writer from Toronto.
Thank you. I'm going to read an excerpt from Dying Times, which is being published by Exile Editions in 2021. And I acknowledge a recommender's grant from the Ontario Arts Council in the writing of Dying Times. This is the most comforting piece that I want to read tonight from the book. And it's my parents' love story. More than the greatest love the world has known, this is the love I give to you alone. My life will be in your keeping, waking, sleeping, laughing, weeping. Bobby Darin. Their life in each other's keeping lasted 67 years. Until my father's death at 87, Mom had never been alone a day in her life. Her attempts to learn at 87 how to be a widow endured 3 years. My favorite bedtime story, whether it was Dad tucking us into bed or Mom, was the story of how they met. According to both, it was love at first sight. Mom had gone to a Toronto dance hall, Sunnyside, with her sister Sophia. The story, however, was about the car ride home. Dad's friend Mario was driving because he owned the car. Giovanni was in the back seat with Francesca. With every turn in the road, Giovanni leaned into Francesca. She felt a shock go through her, a warm thrill. Too shy to speak, they sat in silence. In Mom's story, Dad called her at 7:30 the next morning. She was so shy, afraid of my shadow, that she put her sister, Sophia, on the phone to carry on the conversation. She was only 16. In Dad's story, it was 9:30 in the morning. 7:30 would not have been respectful. He was 23 and said he thought about such things. He said she must have waited beside the phone for 2 hours. War came. Dad enlisted. He was stationed at the Canadian National Exhibition Grounds in Toronto. Through weeks and months, he didn't contact Francesca. By his story, he didn't want to start something that would have to be broken off. My mother, however, had learned that he was there, and she took it as a sign. She was so heartsick with loss that her hair began to fall out. She pined for him. She mourned him. But they found each other again, and a wartime correspondence ensued, and even a recording of his voice reading a letter to his beloved, yearning to be with her, and photographs of Dad training on the mountains out west in Whistler, and more letters from the time Dad was stationed in Port Alberni. He never did go overseas. Challenged by the British officers who were trying to shame enlisted men into signing up for active duty, one demanded to know, "What will you tell your grandchildren?" My father said, "I will have grandchildren." Francesca and Giovanni married in Toronto during the war. Immediately following the wedding, on Dad's brief furlough, they went to Niagara Falls for their honeymoon. Mom was gorgeous, and Dad was a champion weightlifter with the hands of an artist. The newlyweds attracted so much attention in Niagara Falls that Dad, although he had papers permitting civilian clothing, had to put his uniform back on. "Who's the dame?" a group of sailors taunted. "My wife, and don't you dare dishonor her with your filthy stares." Mom was so shy, such an innocent. She hid behind a bureau on their wedding night. "I was just playing," she said when I reminded her of this story. He was so warm. When he put his arms around me, he was always so warm. She had been protected throughout the whole of their lives, right to the end. And then she found herself alone, with no one to prepare a table in the presence of her enemies. In the beautiful intimacies of their lives together, she had found a freedom, but it was a freedom that sometimes filled her with a fear of those intimacies, a fear that such intense intimacies could only lead to pain, to an inevitable sense of horrible loss. And now that he was gone, she said she understood that he was gone, far beyond the pains and joy of their life together, beyond their intimacies and that fear. He was gone into another kind of freedom where in her own death, she would never find him. Together in dying, but never in death.
Thank you, that was great. And now we'll have Francesco Esposito, who is from Montreal. Welcome, Francesco.
Hi, Delia. Hi, everybody. So some years ago, I wrote a short story for a recital about Brazilian soccer and music. In Brazil, you can meet characters in which sadness and joy are very mixed. And so today, I will read you something that actually is a drama, but that I try to tell in a funny and surreal way. So, il Brasile ha generato talenti calcistici straordinari. Alcuni hanno sviluppato doti ineguagliabili. Il dribbling di Garrincha, la velocità di Careca, la potenza di Roberto Carlos. C'è un calciatore che non sarà ricordato per le sue finte o la sua tecnica, ma che è il numero uno in un'altra categoria, la fantasia. Luciano Siqueira de Oliveira era un discreto esterno sinistro che aveva tanta voglia di sfondare, ma anche qualche anno di troppo, e così decise di rifarsi una vita, anzi di crearsene una nuova. In Brasile li chiamano gatti, sono quei calciatori che falsificano la loro età perché più sono giovani e più i club professionistici sono disponibili a comprare i loro cartellini. La storia è grottesca e tragicomica, paradossale al punto da cogliere Pirandello in contropiede. Luciano è nato a Rio de Janeiro nel 1975 e ha cominciato a giocare a pallone piuttosto tardi. Bravo era bravo, ma non proprio di primissimo pelo, quando le squadre più importanti del suo paese cominciarono a mettergli gli occhi addosso. E così i talent scout gli preferivano sempre qualche compagno, magari meno forte ma più giovane. Proprio quando era sul punto di mollare tutto, gli balenò la soluzione più semplice, uno scambio di identità con un ragazzino di 4 anni più giovane di lui. E fu così che il maturo Luciano Siqueira de Oliveira scomparve misteriosamente dal panorama calcistico brasiliano, proprio quando si presentò alla ribalta il promettente Heriberto Conceição da Silva, un talentuoso laterale del 79. In pratica, documenti a parte, la stessa persona. Luciano Heriberto aveva contraffatto il suo passaporto e per tutta una serie di circostanze fortuite lo stratagemma funzionò. Fu ingaggiato dal Palmeiras e disputò un ottimo campionato anche in considerazione della sua nuova tenera età. Appena ventenne, diciamo così, ottiene finalmente la sua grande occasione, il salto nella Serie A italiana, al Bologna prima ed al Chievo poi. La carriera di Heriberto procede nel migliore dei modi, tanto da essere richiesto dalle squadre in odore di scudetto. Il segreto però gli comincia a pesare come un macigno. I compagni racconteranno che nello spogliatoio lo prendevano in giro perché dimostrava più anni di quelli che aveva, anzi che diceva di avere. Lui abbozzava un sorriso e poi abbassava lo sguardo. L'impostore pentito non ce la fa più, è una pentola a pressione e in arriva un figlio al quale non potrà dare il suo cognome. E poi ci sono lo stress dei doppi compleanni a festeggiare e le sue origini da nascondere a tutti i costi. In preda ai rimorsi, il fu Mattia Heriberto confessa tutto, seppellisce se stesso e rinasce con nome ed identità nuovi, anzi vecchi. Heriberto Conceição da Silva, classe 79, torna a essere Luciano Siqueira de Oliveira, classe 75. Di colpo è invecchiato di 4 anni Luciano, anche perché il suo stratagemma rischia seriamente di condurlo dietro le sbarre di un carcere. Alla fine se la cava a buon mercato, dopo 6 mesi di squalifica è di nuovo in campo, ancora nel Chievo dei Miracoli, una piccola squadretta di provincia che da anni riesce a tenere testa ai più forti club della Serie A. Poi ci sarebbe Heriberto, quello vero, quello che in cambio di un piccolo compenso aveva a sua volta cambiato identità ed era diventato Luciano. Si dice che fosse un giovane contadino di Rio Bonito, ma questa è un'altra storia. Grazie.
Okay, thank you, Francesco. That was interesting. And now I guess we have commercial time.
Yes, we do. Thanks, Delia. So the AICW offers a weekly Shut Up and Write on Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 12:30. That's, I'm assuming, Eastern Standard Time. All are welcome to join this community of writers. The event is hosted by Annalisa Panati and Licia Canton. AICW also offers monthly For Chiacchiere in Italiano sessions, a chance to speak Italian with native speakers, hosted by Maria Pia Spadafora and Rosaria Moretti Lori. Please write to info@aicw.ca if you would like to attend any one of these events. We have some other events coming up as well. On November 25th at 5 p.m., the Istituto Italiano di Cultura is hosting a session on Italian-Canadian writers discussing historical fiction. And mark your calendars because the next open mic is on January 15th. So back over to you, Delia, to our next 4 authors.
Thank you, Renee. So our next reader is Giuseppina Cesari. She is from Le Marche, a small town by the sea, from Le Marche. Welcome, Giuseppina.
I'm going to give you a little explanation in English first. The first poem is called Lo Sparo, which in English means shotgun, shot. But the literally translation is impossible because for us, Lo Sparo, in my own dialect, means fireworks. Okay? So this poem is going to be about the fireworks we share every mid-August. We stay by the sea all together. We enjoy the night. We look at the fireworks, and and so because it's Heritage Month, this is dedicated to my people. Lo sparo. Lo sparo. Lo sparo. La luce. Gli amici di sempre. L'amore di una vita. Una serata felice. Lo sparo. Così, tendo l'orecchio al vento sfuggente, ai barlumi lontani e agli echi vicini. Lo sparo. Tutti insieme lo ammiriamo, lo caldeggiamo, lo scrutiamo, lo fotografiamo ed infine lo dimentichiamo. Lo sparo. Passa un lampo nel cielo rosso e noi cresciamo. Passa un altro e noi viviamo. E ne passa ancora un altro e noi invecchiamo. Tanti spari, tanti anni, tanti ricordi, tanta vita. Lo sparo. Okay, I hope you got the meaning. It's about basically about the caducity of life and sharing with friends, you know, the day of Ferragosto, you know, mid-August. But now I would like to read another poem that I actually wrote during the lockdown. I was very depressed, so I wrote a happy poem about you know, my need for being somewhere else, in a dream place, in a special place where I could see friends, family, and share. Okay, and I'll read the English translation first. Forgive my bad English translation, and then the original in Italian for all of you. Okay, and the title is Io voglio un posto. In English, I would like a place. I would like a place. I would like a place where perfumes are melodies. I would like a place where wine sings and bread jumps. I would like a place where air is tinged with gold. And most of all, I would like a place where we speak with words of wind. And we write with an antique inkwell. I may have dreamed that place. I may have remembered that place. I may have always yearned that place. But whenever that place is, I can feel its ancient flavor, dissolve in a raindrop and then extinguish the sea of hatred. And the Italian. Io voglio un posto. Io voglio un posto dove I profumi sono melodie. Io voglio un posto dove il vino canta e il pane salta. Io voglio un posto dove l'aria si tinge d'oro e più di tutto, io voglio un posto dove si parla con parole di vento e si scrive con un calamaio antico. Forse l'ho sognato, tale posto. Forse l'ho ricordato. O forse ancora l'ho sempre anelato. Ma ovunque esso sia tale posto, io sento il suo sapore antico sciogliersi in una goccia di pioggia e spegnere il mare dell'odio. Grazie. Thank you. Thank you very much. Grazie.
Giuseppina, thank you. And now I guess the next person is Josie DeSouza from, I've got Oakville, but near Toronto.
From Oakville.
Bill? Okay, welcome.
Thank you so much, Delia. Can you hear me? I hope.
We can
Okay,
hear
so
you.
my name is Josie DeSouza, and I live in Oakville. And I have written several collections of poetry, and I'm very happy that Mosaic Press is going to be publishing this new book entitled Metastasis. And it is a collection about my mom's battle with cancer. So it is about cancer and viruses at the body level, as well as the societal level, and as well at the surveillance level in our world today, which threaten our own survival as a species and a global ecological collapse. So I'm just going to read one poem. It's a little bit long, that's why. And it's called The New Normal. You will get used to it. One day you won't even remember the way it used to be. Slowly, incrementally, the new reality will enter your present. In small doses at first, at times forced drastically upon you by sudden external shifts, proverbial crises, man-made turmoils, tectonic rearrangements. Then yesterday's normals will begin to fade into explainable histories. Words to restring the frames of a film, frames of yesterday. And soon you will get used to your aging reflection. The customs you had to give up to acculturate in your new country. The people you had to leave behind, the ones who died, the small percentage of radiation in your drinking water, all those nuclear tests they did since World War II, morphing the DNA. The polar caps are melting. Venice is drowning. The disappearance of the rainforest. Australia burning. Dictators posing globally as democratic leaders. The children they're maiming in wars. The innocent people rotting in jails. The wars. The money they're making off the wars. The plastic refuse choking our oceans. Animals of our lifetime going extinct. The stalemate of right and left, rationalizations with nothing ever changing. The internet, hackers, the dark web, the fake news, the fake everything, Monsanto, pesticides on your apples, on your cornflakes, stored in your fat. And yes, you will rationalize it, minimizing its gravity to survive. A thing you wouldn't be able to bear should the undiluted truth hit you at full force. You, like a seagull on the polluted shore at the city's outskirts. Blinded, lame, pecking at oil-drenched algae, stones, making do with an injured, malfunctioning wing, hovering in semi-flight over the corrupted world. Sunlight shining on the garbage dump of a tainted planet. And okay, this one is about, it fits in with the election, even though I wrote it 2 years ago. It's called Fake News. Today, we are obliged to be realistic, to invent yet another rhyme. We know the rules and proclaim the scientific. Today's the day we have to be diplomatic. Our world is old, yet new and hectic. They're perfecting the atom bomb while we prattle in vowel chime. And saying this has made me feel politic. My dearest president, my darling mastermind. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Bruno, welcome, Carmela.
So I'm Carmela Bruno. I am the author of my first children's book called The Littlest Gosling of Grenadier Pond. It is illustrated by Rosa Siciliano. The story is set in High Park in Toronto, and it's about a gosling and his adventures on Bloor Street, where he not only learns about life in the city, but makes discoveries about himself. I'm going to read a few pages from the beginning. Bloor Street, called out Mrs. Goose when they arrived. The littlest gosling stared and wondered at the bustle of the city on the other side of the street. The sidewalks were busy with people walking one way and the other, and the storefronts were crammed with fruit, vegetables, and bunches of flowers. Fun, thought the littlest gosling. The other three goslings, however, complained. I'm hungry, thirsty, hungry. I'm tired, added Mr. Gander. All right then, everyone, said Mrs. Goose. Let's go back to the pond. When no one was looking, Mr. Gander sneaked behind a big rock nearby to get some rest, then fell asleep. The littlest gosling, meanwhile, wandered away from the line toward the edge of the sidewalk. There he stood, as tall as he could, took a deep breath, and started crossing the street. Horns honked, brakes screeched, such noise and commotion, until finally the littlest gosling was on the other side of Bloor Street. Wow, thought the littlest gosling. Everything looked much, much bigger, and the littlest gosling felt much, much smaller. So he stuck out his chest, took the biggest step he could with his littlest legs, and began his new journey. And now I'm going to skip to the middle of the story where the gosling meets a squirrel. Though a little frightened, the littlest gosling ventured further down the laneway. Amazing, he thought, when he came to a bin behind a grocery store. It was filled with spoiled fruit that the grocer had thrown out. I'm hungry, said the littlest gosling. So he jumped and jumped and jumped with his littlest legs and bounded straight into the bin. The littlest gosling had landed on a squirrel, nibbling on an apple. It chattered at the littlest gosling. It chattered again in a scolding way, but the littlest gosling scolded right back with a big voice that sounded almost like a grown-up honk. Then he jumped into the air as high as he could with his littlest legs and came down, almost landing on the squirrel again. Eek, it shrieked. Then in an instant, the squirrel scrambled out of the bin and scampered down the laneway. Hey, it scared the squirrel away, thought the littlest gosling, then ate a piece of apple. Though a little tired, the littlest gosling continued jumping. He jumped higher and higher and higher until he vaulted out of the bin, tumbled to the ground, and bumped his head. A kind doctor, who was leaving her office by the back door, noticed the littlest gosling and wrapped a bandage around his head, put a Band-Aid on his beak, and a patch over his eye. There, he'll be just fine, she said, and went happily on her way. Feeling all alone, the littlest gosling longed to be back with his family. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in purchasing the book and you'll get to read the whole story, it'll make a great Christmas stocking stuffer for children or your grandchildren. You can email me at cbruno@bell.net. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. During these times, I find my mind wandering to rituals and activities that give me comfort and connect me to my past. This summer, I was drawn to the routine and rhythm of gardening. The garden became my refuge and reminded me of my mother, her garden, and her relationship to the land. I will share an excerpt from an unpublished story about my mother entitled Antonietta's Garden. And I just want to show you a photo of her, I hope you can see, from the 1950s. Antonietta peered at the stark outline of the apple tree branches in the darkness of the wintry Canadian morning. They looked like dramatic black brushstrokes against the gray, cold sky. In the middle of winter, thoughts of fragrant and bountiful apples with a pink-hued flesh were a distant memory. As Antonietta sat at the kitchen table, she gazed upwards through the window, studying the coloration of the sky and the denseness of the clouds. If the sky was clear and azure blue, it would be a cold day, but her bones would not ache. If the sky was a mottled gray, It was a sign of the dreaded humidity that would bring on the aches and pains she cursed. Her mind wandered to the sweetness of summer and the warm, gentle breezes that caressed her northern garden. She could smell the floral chamomile plants and the pungent mint stalks swaying gracefully against the setting sun. She could taste the tart flesh of apples that glistened like cherry red orbs reflecting the sun's rays. She heard the laughter of her grandchildren echoing through the orchard as they picked juicy red raspberries. When she worked in her garden, Antonietta was inevitably transported to her picturesque village of Grimaldi, nestled in the rolling hills of southern Italy. There she toiled in her first garden, an ancestral tract of land called I Vasci. She left her beloved village in 1954 and settled in Port Arthur, Ontario, where she married Gaspare. Life in Canada was consumed with raising a family of 5 children and caring for her mother and husband. The garden was a constant yet evolving presence in her life. As she lovingly tended the land and reaped its harvest, she supported her young family and nourished her ailing relatives. In Port Arthur, Antonietta and Gaspare adapted the seasonal calendar of southern Italy to the cold winter climate. With military precision, they utilized every possible method to grow, gather, and preserve large quantities of food for the dreaded winter season. The riserva was the repository for many of the items carefully preserved to last the long winter. A well-stocked riserva provided a measure of security for the upcoming year. Mason jars full of tomato sauce, pickled vegetables, and fruit preserves glistened in the chiaroscuro of the riserva. Seasonal practices that were instrumental to their survival in Italy became cherished traditions in their new homeland. In her latter years, Antonietta nursed her husband as he struggled with Alzheimer's, a disease that stole his memory and spirit away bit by bit. A warm cup of tea quelled his chaotic thoughts and helped him to sleep. The garden provided a welcome respite from the constant care he required. Working in the garden, touching the soil, and coaxing the plants to grow, she felt her spirit and her strength renew. When Gasparo succumbed to his illness, Antonietta turned again to the rituals of planting the garden to give her life a comforting and familiar rhythm. She became the sentinel of the garden. As she often reminded her children, Gaspare left the house to me with documents. She was now the patrone, and it was her duty to preserve and protect. The apple trees were now intertwined in a graceful canopy, and Antonietta was reluctant to cut them down. She continued to pick and preserve only a fraction of the apples that rained down in the thousands, covering the lawn in a multicolor quilt of red and green until mid-October. One day, arborists arrived for the annual tree trimming. They were met by an imperious Antonietta, all 5 feet 2 inches of her, who declared, "Io sono la patrone, non toccate niente." She dismissed the interlopers along with her own children, thus preventing any encroachment on her domain. As Antonietta aged, her garden mirrored her increasing frailty. Sturdy chamomile plants became spindly. Mint grew in patches and raspberries were barely visible through the overgrown trees. The garden had been vast and substantial, but now much of it lay fallow. In the stillness of the simple and solitary life of those years, Antonietta combined favorite ingredients that evoked memories of her many gardens. She began her day by gingerly descending into the basement, clutching the railings for balance. She fetched a bundle of dried chamomile from the basket on the table in the summer kitchen. Placing the dried stalks in a well-worn saucepan, she brought the mixture to a boil and let it steep to a deep caramel color. She strained the tisane and sweetened it with Canadian honey. It was not as dark and fragrant as the bergamot perfumed honey of her youth, but sweet and unctuous nonetheless. Slowly she let the honey drip and anoint the hot steaming tea. She cupped her hands around the warm mug and inhaled the earthy aroma. Sometimes she placed the cup against her forehead as if to warm her spirit and shield her against the cold winds. Antonietta opened the refrigerator door, took out the homemade raspberry jam and spread it on her morning toast. The aromas of the jam and tea encircled her like a protective barrier. For her, this ritual evoked the sweet life of her youth, when she was free to roam the pastoral landscape of Grimaldi, where she began her lifelong relationship with the land. Now the sweetness of life was enhanced by a warm cup of tea, the promise of the day ahead, and the lingering memories of a life well lived. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the reading, Francis. And I guess that concludes our reading for the day. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. It was great.
Thank you, Delia. Maria Pia, I think you wanted to say something?
Yes, volevo ringraziare tutti, anche in italiano, per aver partecipato a questo evento dall'Italia e da varie parti del Canada. Grazie, buonanotte per chi è in Italia e buona serata per chi è in Canada.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you. The free event on Zoom.
Thank you. Grazie.
Thank you. This free event was brought to you by the
Thank you so much.
Canadian Writers, which is run by a group of volunteers. We welcome donations at any time. Please go to aicw.ca to donate and to find out more about our activities. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.